AutoCAD. I'm a game developer. The first bit of this is just gonna be me telling you who I am so that you have a reason to ask questions, otherwise I'm just a random man standing in your class. So I've been working in games come this October for about 12 years in AAA. I went to college at Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida for game content creation and computer animation, where we did rigging, we did modeling, compositing, all on really old software that you guys probably would never use ever again, but some of it's still relevant today, like Maya and AutoCAD for engineering. Yeah, well, they took over, so. Then out of college, I was lucky enough to get a job at Rockstar Games in New York, where I worked for 5.5 years. At Rockstar, I'd say like the biggest project that I worked on was Red Dead 1 and Max Payne 3, which was my final title there, and I was actually in quality assurance. As a 19-year-old coming out of college, the best way to get into games is sometimes through QA, because QA opens the door to almost every discipline. So I started my career with QA. How many in here is interested in working in video games or video game development in some format? Enough of you to have this conversation, I'd say. So, so QA as a department is a great way into production, it's a great way into design, because you get so close to working with the game and actually testing the game, and sometimes it's a really good primer for people that just love playing video games. If you find yourself sitting at home reverse engineering what the designers are probably doing or what the engineers are probably doing to get the results that you're seeing, you might be a good candidate for QA. So from Rockstar, I left with my sights set on moving to production, and I worked at Avalanche Studios, which is just 2 blocks south of Rockstar Games on Spring and Broadway in Soho. And I've been there now for about 7 years, and this is all the AAA stuff that I've been doing for the last 12 years. And in those 12 years, when I left Rockstar, it was mostly for autonomy so that I could start my own indie company, which I also did. And in the last couple of years, we've released 4 Steam games, and I'm going to show you trailers for the stuff that we've done, so you have a little context on, like, this is very much garage games. It was me and another partner, and I was mostly the animator, designer, and artist, and he was the programmer and designer. We split that responsibility, which for the most part, with like true garage indies, when you're just hanging out with your friend coming up with a great idea, that's kind of how it works out. You split the difference. And it gave us some creative freedom, because when you're working in AAA, you're usually only working on a single thing. It's a humongous project with hundreds of other developers. So this was a chance for us to kind of like get a little bit more creative at home. With a full-time job, having an indie company is taxing. It was a lot of nights of me staying up until 2 in the morning after a full-time job, kind of just pixel art and animation and chugging along and building out system prototypes and all sorts of things to actually get the game up and running. But we were able to pump out 4 games on Steam with marketing and advertising and voice acting in about a 5-year time span in which we had to take a break. But in the first 3 years, we came out with something called the Attack Pack, which was actually a series of 3 small games that we made. They were all completely different genres, something that you would get in a bundle. And so if you liked one game, you would most likely, you might dislike one of the 3 games, but there's a good chance that one of these 3 genres would hit the player and kind of give them a good experience. And our marketing was very much, if you guys watch Adult Swim, we were kind of trending towards being like the Adult Swim of indies, as far as like really tongue-in-cheek, self-deprecating, and sort of like a VHS waterlogged style in our marketing videos, which I'll show you now before I go any farther, because I have one more video after this. So this is the launch trailer for the Attack Pack, that 3-pack of small games that we basically made a couple of years ago in our living room, and you'll see the comedy and the humor that we're
And kids, tired of those other video games? Free yourself from the shackles of just one game with the Attack Pack from the Attack Mountain Video Game Company. Not 1, but 2 whole games for you to buy and then immediately forget to play. Only the best for our video game guests. Yes, good news now for basement-dwelling loners. Over-the-top spy action's the name of the game with SOS. Special operative stories. Throw your way to victory in 2 exciting launch episodes. You'll exhibit the 3 classic S's of video game consumption: screaming, sweating, and sobbing. Wow, that's spine-tingling, man. You know, I took a few bullets in the warning. They're still in there, because I'm afraid of doctors.
reserve.
Take a deep breath and get weird in the woods with the Gray Man. Now, I honestly don't know what I'm looking at here. What's that supposed to be? Some sort of little spaceship or something? What's that? Some sort of space friend? What's he supposed to be doing there? I mean, that's not even like a death ray, man. It's just like he's cooking his dinner or something. Call the sheriff, Mom. Your sweet baby's going to space for dinner tonight. Jeepers, there's something you don't see every day. Man, I don't even know who the bad boy is anymore. Now, there's the thing. And, oh, boy, you look up there and hold the phone. I thought there were only 2 games. I don't even know what this one is, so I don't know what you want from me. Must be some sort of bonus crap. People are giving me a headache. Out now. Own it today and forever. Or don't. I don't care. I already got paid for this gig, baby. Attack Mountain. It's not fancy, but it's pretty good. 3 games now.
So, a little bit of fun. Obviously not take ourselves too seriously, which actually made the creative process a lot more fun. And I don't know, a lot of you guys are young, but if you watch Adult Swim, you know, have you ever heard of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, the show? Crickets. New generation. Well, that's George Lowe, the voice actor of like so much Aqua Teen Hunger Force and Space Ghost. So working with him was also like really awesome. We just hit his agent up, and he was interested in doing all of our VO, and wound up actually working as the narrator for our 4th game, which was a kind of like joust with basketball mixed together. So it was a sports game, and he was like the referee announcer, which was really fun. So that is the indie side of the stuff that we've done. And when I moved into Avalanche, we work on, the New York studio works primarily on Just Cause, which is the IP with the crazy guy with the unlimited parachutes and the wingsuit and the grappling hook and physics-driven world. So it's a lot of work. I moved into production. I started working with the AI team, the artists, everyone that runs the road network stuff, the concept art. So basically the full pipeline from concept, the creation of a character, to modeling the character, animating the character, and providing the character behavior through their AI engineers. And that was for Just Cause 4. And when we released Just Cause 4, I became a creative producer on Los Demonios, which was the DLC that we just released 2 weeks ago, which has been the last 12 months of my life at Avalanche, and it's been probably the most creative endeavor that we've taken on, because it was the first time. If you guys are familiar with the franchise is fairly contemporary, besides the fact that you have unlimited parachutes and wingsuits and grappling hook coming out of your character's body. But besides that, it's fairly grounded. It's like in a real world with cars and stuff, buildings, people, a military, an antagonist that's trying to take you down, pretty straightforward stuff. But Los Demonios, the publisher, allowed us to kind of create our Blood Dragon undead nightmare alternate reality of this South American world, which I'm going to show you a trailer for right now, and that is the awesome black metal t-shirt that we're wearing today. And this was great. I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about this after you see. This is the teaser that came out, so we'll give you a little bit, and if you have context, you can ask questions later.
No one knows where it came from. No one knows why it's here.
Obviously, you're not like seeing too much, but it's obviously in a horror genre, which is also really fun because it's something that we've never done in the 7 years of New York history, to actually create monsters, do organic chaos objects that destroy, create new shaders that allow us to do like vertex movement. This is a 15-minute long gameplay video you can look up at home if you're interested in playing the whole thing through your eyes. But yeah, you might get a little bit of Annihilation, Netflix vibes from these domes that we had, and basically we were able to take the established world and choose locations that we didn't fully realize. So, for example, when you're working on a big game like Red Dead or a giant open world game like Grand Theft Auto, you don't want to make the map any larger than you can actually provide love to. Otherwise, you're going to have huge spaces of nothing. Which a lot of the open world games, open world sandbox games, have that problem. You'll find yourself walking through a field and there's nothing going on. You have no vehicles to interact with. You have no AI or no mission structure nearby. So JC4 had problems with that because we made our map way too large. And one of our ways for kind of subjugating that in DLC was we found places that were underutilized and we infested them with these like alien domes that the player then came in and very localized specific experiences that we can control the gameplay and then set them back off in front of out of the world. About a 3.5 hour long DLC experience, and then you get a bunch of rewards at the end like a lot of DLCs provide. Are you guys, some of you guys video game players generally? Yeah? Cool. Yeah, so, yeah, as the creative producer on this project, it was basically every discipline, interacting with the publisher, talking to them about how the marketing strategy should be, writing the scripts for these like, I was even like sitting there capturing the videos that the publisher was using. And we're talking like Square Enix, the people that make Final Fantasy, have us capturing their footage for their trailers and like writing their scripts. So that was a really fun, creative opportunity for us too. And we bent their will. I mean, we basically did this within the game story, so it kind of, imagine you have Batman, and Batman canon is really strong. Canon is like the story in which the storyline follows. So like, there's the Joker is this character, is very specific, and if you were to, in the actual Batman canon, kill Joker's dead in the canon of Batman. So in the canon of JC4, it's normal, there's no demons, but since we didn't create a separate dimension or a separate SKU that the player has to boot up, like with Undead Nightmare with Red Dead 1, we actually put demons in the canon of the game, and now in JC5, in that reality, there are these demons now. So that was also fun because after working on JC for 7 years, we also kind of got to like subjugate the entire canon and be like, yeah, we're actually going to put these demons that came from another planet that will take over, and like, that's it, leave. And that'll probably be like the last time we'll smoke bomb out of Just Cause and Avalanche will move on to something else. So that was also fun and a new opportunity. But yeah, I had to manage all disciplines, so for the most part, I should be able to answer questions about anything that you guys are wondering as far as between tech art, traditional art, and engineering. Yeah, so that's an intro, and I want to just open up the floor so you guys can kind of have your way with. Yeah.
Have you heard of the movie Annihilation?
Yeah, I said we got the Annihilation vibes from Netflix. That was, I mean, obviously a key reference for the domes themselves was the shimmer. And actually, the shimmer in Annihilation was taking the like DNA and like basically fractalizing them, and that was why the bear was merging with the human, or why everybody was basically, anything that you were touching, your DNA would start merging with it, and you would create a new life form. So we kind of played on that, in that everything that happens within this dome was being terraformed by this other entity that was just trying to communicate with this planet. But in its communication, it was absorbing and killing everything in its path. So to us, it's a threat, but to it, it's just like a mold. It's kind of just living and trying to exist. It doesn't really understand why it's there, which is very Annihilation.
For pixel art, do the character models have like skeletons, or is it just like?
Not for the stuff that we did. I was doing like traditional hand-drawn, which is, you know, there's two sides of it. Some people hate that. I mean, like, I'm warming up to the idea of the skeletons on a pixel-based like sprite, but there's something about the animation fidelity that drives me crazy when you see the looseness of the arms. You can almost, like, you ever play Scribblenauts?
Yes.
You know, it's jointed and everything's on joints and it's kind of got that floppy feeling. You lose that traditional pixel art vibe. If that doesn't matter to you, like in Dead Cells, they made Dead Cells look like it's pixel art, but it's actually all 3D models, which is a fantastic way to kind of like meet in the middle. And it can also sometimes be, on the production side, cheaper to use 3D these days because it's super expensive and time consuming to do hand-drawn pixel art. And so, yeah, I don't know how I feel about but I didn't use joints. to answer your question. But yeah, that was my rant on like, that technology came on, it started kind of cheapening the look of 2D games when they were still trying to be traditional 2D games. But then they found a new genre which was like, oh, we don't care that they don't look like Castlevania Symphony of the Night or like Mega Man. Like, we don't care about 2D traditional pixel art, we just want to animate our pixels quickly, in which case that would be a really good pipeline to use.
Did you work on anything at Avalanche besides JC?
I worked on Mad Max for a little bit, and we worked on Rage for a small period of time. Rage 2, the one that just came out under Bethesda. But yeah, thanks. We actually just had a kickoff meeting this morning because we're working on this new unannounced project. And the World team, our tech internally, we have fantastic terrain editing tech, which means that you can sculpt the terrain, it's all volumetric. But since it's new tech, of course, multiple teams have different problems with it. Like, oh, we want it to be able to do this, we want it to be able to do this. So it's my responsibility to sit and backlog all of these things that all these teams need and try to pitch it to the tools team so we can get improvements. But in Mad Max, we were using meshes on terrain. So if you imagine you sculpt the terrain, it's all nice and smooth. It doesn't necessarily look hard. It looks kind of soft like clay. And then you make a mesa from a desert, beautiful hand-sculpted mesh that you model in Maya or whatever your preferred software is. And you can sink it into the terrain so it looks, and then you get the blending tech to seamlessly blend this mesh. But what you get is these like hyper-real, high-definition, really great fidelity environment sets that you could make a huge spire, you could make it, but it's actually a hand model, where instead of sculpting it with terrain and it makes it look like mashed potatoes. You know, when you go to the beach and you put your hand under the water with the sand, you grab sand and you pick it up, and it creates a tower. That's what terrain, volumetric terrain reads look like. And you know, we're also always dealing with distance reads, like level of detail. If you ever play a video game and the farther you get away from something, it starts to look more and more like mashed potatoes, but it almost happens in steps.
Yeah.
There's these level of detail things built into everything. So the way that we tackled Mad Max was meshes and terrain. The way we tackled Just Cause 4 was only terrain because of tech changes in the company, which fundamentally hurt JC4's world compared to Mad Max's, which is like one of the most beautiful worlds we've ever
You're
created.
thinking about Mad Max?
No, they aren't. Yeah, yeah. That game. I mean, that game. Every game comes with its own baggage, with whether it's publisher or its resources or its internal. That game just had a lot of head baggage from the publisher and Warner Brothers. But a lot of people that really love it, they really love it. So, yeah. Anybody?
As you've sort of moved up into like this project manager role or something like that, do you miss like getting into like the nitty gritty and like just working on the artist stuff and design stuff?
So after we did the attack pack and we did the fourth game, my partner and I kind of decided like, okay, we can't keep doing this because there's a level of it that's soul crushing if you're not like, you know, no one's making a game, like for example, 36,000 games are released on Steam now every year. That means everyone can make indie games. Any one of you can go home and get Game Maker and start making a game and start posting on Twitter and get picked up by a publisher and suddenly you're a game maker, which is amazing. But it also means that like, there has to be a limit to what you're doing. So after 4 games working at home and really crunching on my personal time while also having the AAA day job, it was like, all right, we got to cut this off, and we started steering to, let's make this an actual company. So for the past year, my partner and I have been building a pitch to people like Take-Two and to Bandai Namco, and to actually get proper funding to actually start a real company, because you just have so much energy. I spent like all my 20s making indie games. Now that I've done enough AAA production stuff, I feel like, okay, we could probably run a whole studio here in New York. Let's make a pitch for the next big game, get real money, make a real team, and not spend all of our nights kind of toiling, and instead spend our day job, switch our day job with our night job, and make indie a reality. But do something that they call, the industry is now calling it triple I. Triple I is triple A talent that leaves triple A and makes a game that is a higher scope of an indie, so it's triple indie. I mean, it's a buzzword, but that's like a true category of games that are coming out now that, yeah. So that's the direction that we're taking now, is we're working on this new pitch, and we're definitely in the conversation phase of getting that out there. And also with DLC 2, I was able to, the Los Demonios DLC, that was when I switched over to creative production. So in Just Cause 4, I was doing straight up project management, backlog grooming, road mapping, sprint planning, like agile methodology, all these production buzzwords that if you're interested, you will learn if you enter the industry. And the experience that I gained from there allowed me to gain the trust of my team creatively for me to actually become more of a creative director on this project. So I actually took back some of my creativity with force a little bit, but also by convincing your peers that you're capable of doing that job as well. But it takes time. Yeah.
Outside of like testing the game if it works, do you write it for fun?
Yeah, we do. I mean, like, it depends on what we're doing, right? JC4, we played a lot, but I would say Los Demonios, because it was my project, I got to create a culture around it. I got to create the review process. So not only would we be play testing internally with team members on a more formal side, like, hey, you haven't played yet, I want to grab you for an hour-long play test, I'm going to take notes, and then we'll review the notes and decide, give them a priority order, send them out to the teams if they're necessary to, and then they'll figure out if they want to implement. And then we have the more non-formal, which honestly, depending on your team culture, could be even better, which is like Friday night, I buy like 60 beers, and I have the entire team come and we just play all night and drink until 10 p.m. But what you're really doing is, everyone works from 9 to 6, but now because we have beers, everyone's working till 10, and we're having fun, and we're generating so many ideas, and we're being so transparent with each other because we've built this culture on like actual friendship. Eventually, you work with these people for so long that you become friends like you guys are here. The more friendship and more like open transparency you can build in these review processes allows you like really, you won't be afraid to mention an idea that you have in front of the crew, and it might be a great idea. And if you feel like you can't express yourself in these spaces, then you know what's the point. So those socials that we had were some of the most beneficial that I would say in my career making games.
Have you ever like being that you create like the pixel art and like design, you ever like played like really popular games and like criticized and like tried to
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was saying earlier with like the entrance into QA. Like that's having that critical eye. And I mean, there's one thing being an angry GameStop employee and just being like, this game is the least popular open world game. I wouldn't recommend it. Don't buy it for your son. Like there's a lot of, it's very easy to critique, but there's another thing to do with intention and with thought and with like the actual craft in mind. A lot of people that are playing these games, they want to be game makers, and they're actively reverse engineering through their critique. So if you're like, oh yeah, I don't know why they made the decision. I just played a game that did it better for this reason. That's something that they could learn from it. Obviously, you're not going to be able to email that feedback, but if you're a game maker and you want to do something similar, you already know how to optimize this bad design choice in the game that you're kind of critiquing. So you kind of take everybody's failures and then you turn them into positives for your own project. And that's like stealing art and recreating it better is what game development is right now. One of you guys?
So, when you made Los Demonios for JC4, you took the already existing world and then just kind of built a bubble around it and then added onto it, or did you like change something about it?
So we had the established world from Just Cause 4, which has its own linear story and missions and subquests and all this stuff. And then we came up with the concept for the Los Demonios project, and we knew that we wanted to turn the gameplay on its ear so hard that it like felt like a different game. But to do that, we would have to contain the player in like a little space. So what we did was we found basically the crappiest realized towns in the world, the ones with nothing happening, no subquests, no missions, no like vehicle stunts, the most clean but also boring and underused locations in the game, and we made them into hellscapes that you could go into. But it was in the same world. So the world is massive. It's 32 by 32, and there was more than enough space for us to kind of take. And we only did 7, we did 8 of them, but we had to create, new open world games. When you add DLC, there's usually a new island that pops up, and it's like, oh, the new DLC island appeared. You either go there to kick off the quest, or all of the DLC happens on that island. But for us, we went to an island, you kicked off the DLC, and then you went back to the mainland, and then they all appeared on the mainland as you. So it was a really good way on a production side for us to save money, reuse locations, and kind of just focus on these localized locations. So when you go in them, the environment authoring is like some of the best that's ever been done because we could actually focus on these more curated spaces.
After you release a game, like there's like a lot of people criticize it, like anything, but if there's like a big thing that people criticize and maybe like you didn't it's like there's like a that you didn't realize like when you're making the game, you ever like release it or like push like a big update to the game.
Right. So especially with Just Cause, which is like you're either a cult favorite or they're not happy with it on the internet. You know, so you're almost constantly dealing with publisher relations. How do we talk to the community? Oh, they found this bug. How do we like off balance that bug with a feature that's interesting? If it's something that is super dramatic, like wow, we completely blew it, I mean, that's unfortunate. But there are patches. I mean, games are patched all the time. It's going to suck when you release a game and the first hit of feedback is going to be negative because, of course, the first impression is the most important. That's why this early access idea sometimes backfires on games because you get a game on early access on Steam and it is so broken, you're like, what am I even doing? You lose interest and you never go back to it. And then a year later it comes out, it might be an actually good game. But you'll never play it again because it was already like, what did we do here? So, yeah, exactly. So, for that, we'd either patch it if it was a small, if it was like a bug, like, oh, it crashes every time you boot this mission and the game is, like, that's a really bad issue. But if it's all over the message boards, Square will most likely be like, hey guys, can you repatch this thing? But Microsoft and Sony also have restrictions. PC, it's like whatever. Steam has no rules. You can upload whatever the hell you want on Steam. It's madness. There's like no rules. Sony and Microsoft, you have to pay money to submit to them, and you only, after you fail the first submission, you have to pay like $35,000 to $60,000 to resubmit. So it's a huge risk. So, and then when you do get past submission, you get like 5 patches from Sony and Microsoft, which means that you could patch 5 huge patches. These 5 patches can happen during a DLC push, or they can happen independently from a DLC push if you don't have DLC planned, but you just want to fix major shit and 5 giant milestones. But after that 5th one, the money that they paid you is gone. You're probably off to another project because you're a big AAA company. You have other things. You know, you have to ramp your team off of this DLC. You kind of want to get them done so you can move on to the next thing. We're in a weird transition period right now where the main game's done. We're almost done with DLC, and we have this brand new huge project that's like super critical with Microsoft, and we can't get the resources because everyone's still working on DLC. So we kind of want to roll them off and get them. What is this? My first day? It's unannounced. No, I can't. But it's going to require the entire company, so it gets a little iffy when you want to ramp people up. It's new IP. Not just Cause. Which is nice for me because I've been working on Just Cause for way too long. Anyone else?
Last question?
I know like Telltale like shut down because of a bunch of reasons, but like they just couldn't support the company anymore, and so I'm sort of just wondering how like a gaming company like remains successful and like make sure that they're making profit like as much as they're like spending money on games.
Wow,
And stuff like that.
that's a really good question. That's a really good question that honestly like kind of ties into what I was saying before. A good AAA company that wants to make more than that wants to maintain itself. One, probably shouldn't be renting in Soho in New York City, so like we have to move. Because if the place that you're renting is more expensive than your head count, you can't highlight. That's going to lead, maybe not immediately, maybe not the first 2 years, but 3rd or 4th year you're going to start feeling pain, especially if you're not making 90 plus games. Which to make a 90 plus game these days is like, you better be Sony Santa Monica or like Rockstar. Because it's very few and far between, and a lot of it is politics with the PR and the press people, like Kotaku, and that's all that's a game, you know? On top of that, you have to have projects. So like, as a project ramps off, if you don't have another project lined up immediately, or if you don't have enough DLC to go around, you're gonna lay off a bunch of people, and that's why there's always layoffs.